Hey, my name is Ray. This is Anthony. This is the Evangelical Dark Web, Team Evangelical Dark Web, here with you tonight, this evening of streaming. And we're going to be diving into Truth Social, Trump's latest project that's holding him over between 2020 and 2024. So we're going to be diving into the Truth Social launch and how that's changing the social media landscape or not changing the social media landscape. And, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. It's a little crazy. It's getting crazy out there. And the news is just hitting this week. It is a very fast news week for Evangelical Dark Web for sure. A lot of stuff with Francis Collins, a lot of stuff with
Tim Keller.
Andy Tim Keller as well. He has like a lot of cryptic tweets this month because that's who Tim Keller is, except they're not as cryptic as they used to be. And he's just he is who he is. Tim Keller has not changed. People's perception of him has changed. And then Russell Moore is definitely getting dragged down. So a lot of good things are happening in the world, that's for sure. And Andy's a couple other things to talk about. We're going to talk about Andy Stanley later on. We're going to dive into his latest comments because that just needs to be talked about. And I haven't done anything on Andy Stanley in forever. So it is a very busy news cycle for sure. And that's with nothing changing in the Ukraine situation, except now they're just trying to start rumors of bioweapons and stuff like that. So it's getting crazy out there, like I said. And of course, I don't buy the I don't think that Russia's going to use bioweapons in Ukraine. I don't buy that whatsoever. But there were bioweapon labs in Ukraine
And China.
and China, of course. Wuhan. So, with that said, we're going to be talking about Truth Social tonight and things you can and cannot say on Truth Social. Maybe we'll say some of the things you can't say on Truth Social tonight as well. So, you wrote the article that is published simultaneously as this live stream has begun. The article has also begun as well on Evangelical Dark Web. And the article, I changed the title of it to add Trump's name to it. So it's the same title as this live stream, Trump's Truth Social flops hard. And you're more of a finance guy than I am, so you can definitely articulate the more SPAC nonsense that was going on with this company. And you said you had their investor presentation, so let's dive into that.
So, a couple weird things on the investor presentation I saw. On slide 37, they project that they will have 81 million users by 2026 based on 2021 Politico poll of registered voters. So they're basing their ability to garner users entirely based on Trump being able to migrate an audience. So that's like this. Trump was the secret sauce with Truth Social. That's how I wrote about it in a previous article where I actually first touched on Truth, where I said Trump is the secret sauce. There's no secret to that. The other thing I find fascinating is that they view themselves going into content creation, which I don't talk about in the articles at all, but they view Netflix, Disney Plus as like competitors to their social media network.
Really?
And yes, and they believe
What
the
about
bulk.
Frank's speech? So
We're
is this more like Frank's speech, which seems like it's My Pillow store plus my, and I'm so shocked that he got Emerald Robinson on that platform to do a show of all people. Like I'm shocked that she decided to go for Frank's speech, but is that what it's going to become?
she did get fired, and of course
Newsmax, right?
Daily Wire's not going to hire her. So
Yeah. It's hard to get hired by Daily Wire, and I'm surprised that Megan Basham still works at Daily Wire.
no, she
That
drives the clicks.
she does drive the clicks. I cannot believe that the content we do at Evangelical Dark Web, if the Daily Wire were to publish similar content, would explode. That's insane, but it's also hilarious. And I'm not the least bit butthurt about that.
Yeah, one thing like Trump versus like Frank's speech has going for him from an entertainment standpoint is at least Trump has a resume on entertainment. It's just, how quickly can you monetize entertainment? And they believe entertainment will be the bulk of their revenue.
So
based on their.
I'm confused because I've not heard anything about them trying to compete with Netflix or Disney Plus.
I mean, on their presentation, they'll call it like Truth Social. Then they'll have Truth, or TM, Trump, TMTG Plus. So that's where they kind of have everything else, and
Now,
they.
TMTG, is that the stock ticker?
No, stock ticker is currently DWAC, DW or DWAC, Digital World Acquisition Corporation. It'll probably change to TMTG when it officially trades, or
If
maybe they'll
that's
call
not already taken.
it Truth or something. I don't know what the sticker will be. I assume it'll change it once the merger goes through. The other thing to worry about with mergers is that will probably be a stock dilution where, because you're merging a company with a blank check company, the original company will possibly have shares issued to it depending on how the merger is negotiated. But one thing I touched on in, I guess it was the January or December article on the social media landscape, was that they're basically doing an SPAC without actually having a product. Like normally the SPACs started off with like DraftKings, which was an already established brand, advertising on every NFL game for a couple years, and then they used an SPAC to get public. So they're pretty much jumping the ball and moving pretty fast to get the money, which is again a little shaky, especially since SPACs themselves are kind of a little sketchy, especially now that they've all kind of sucked.
Okay.
But you're
So
but you're pretty much going public without even a product.
yeah, and that's what they did to raise money, which is again typically the opposite of how things work. Even in venture capital, you still have to have a product or a proof of concept. And their proof of concept was Trump plus Twitter. There's a large audience for Trump's Twitter. If anything, they should have based the numbers based off Trump's followers on Twitter,
Oh, I think
the
that's what they
follower
did.
count they did.
I mean, why would you use Politico poll of registered voters to justify your monetizable users by 2026? It just doesn't really. I mean, that's not really how I would go about it. But
Okay. So we could take a look at what Truth Social is right now. And I think that'll set the context for uh a lot of what's going on here. So let me pull up Truth Social. Are you able to see it? So this is Truth Social. And as you can see, there's some glaring issues going on. It is only a web page where I download, but I can only download on the App Store. And it brands itself as Truth Social as America's big tent, in quotes, social media platform that encourages open, free, and honest global conversation without discriminating against political ideology. So, with that said, that's what Truth Social is. It's just a download site, and you can only download to iOS. You cannot download it if you have Android, and you cannot use it on a desktop.
yeah, that was kind of one thing I pointed out, and I don't even think that issue's been resolved. From what I'm seeing, the waitlist thing that it's like you come out with a product, you drop it on the App Store, and then all of a sudden, no, it's a wait. I download it, I try to register, and then waitlist. Which I mean, if anything to kill excitement for a product is just making people wait a long time
Yeah,
to
even
get it.
longer. Like this product was way behind schedule. Not only does it come out to a very fragmented segment of its target audience, meaning people that primarily use desktop and people that are primarily Android. You're only going to Apple users, and then only a fraction of those Apple users will use that product because you've added a wait list on top of that. That's
Oh,
just, I don't get it.
and
I've
people,
never seen any product, a social media company, come out that poorly. They're, usually they don't have the traction yet because they're not relying on the celebrity of Trump. But usually, like Parlor was a crappy product. Let's talk about Parlor for a second. My experience on Parlor was they had a desktop version, they had a mobile version. But as far as I know, the mobile version and the desktop version, each mobile version was the same, like Apple versus Android was the same. But they had a mobile server and they had a desktop server. So they had two entirely parallel sites for Parler. They had two parallel sites. And then they eventually merged the two sites on top of each other. And if you had an account created with the desktop version of Parler, it got erased in favor of anything that you had with the app version of Parler, because they erased my Parler account because they created two different accounts for me. So Parler was a crappy product. It was bad software. And this software just was not ready. It might be good software, but it was not ready for the big leagues.
So one thing, I mean, again, early adopters are generally like very forgiving if something is like glitchy, but
I
obviously
mean,
they have to have access to the product. And the other
I
thing
was
is,
not an early adopter to Gab. And I imagine Gab was very rough in its early days 4 years ago. I mean, it's still a little wonky when it comes to notifications, and direct messages, but otherwise, I'm sure it's come a long way.
yeah, and
But they at least had a product ready for people. They didn't rely on gatekeeping app stores. In fact, their mobile app isn't even a real app. It's a web app that they configured their mobile website to function as a perfectly good app, which is, to me, very impressive. So, Thomas is asking, is Gab the best alternative?
I
I
mean,
don't want to bury the lead, but yes.
yeah, spoiler
We'll
alert.
talk about all the alternatives here in a second, but Parler just comes to mind the first because their software was crappy. And Trump's software also crappy in that it wasn't ready for the big leagues. It was not ready for the audience that was curious to check it out. And
I
don't
mean,
forget to send your chats in, because I love reading chats,
and
because I don't come in with notes for this other than I read the article, obviously.
well,
And there's a lot going on
generally,
out there. It's a crazy world.
you might launch your desktop first. That way, you at least have a product that's out there, it gets interested, and that way, when you get the app going, then all of a sudden you get a lot more interest. So he should have just launched the desktop first
Yeah,
and
isn't that
then
what
done app.
that's what Reddit did, right?
Yeah, I don't think they had an app for the longest time, but
Yeah.
I don't
I mean,
use
I don't
Reddit.
use Reddit. And then Reddit's mobile website is extremely annoying because it always encourages you to download an app, but I don't have an account, so I won't download the app. That's annoying. And then Twitter is kind of increasingly becoming hostile towards people that don't have accounts logged in, is what I've noticed. So I might have to create a burner Twitter account just so I can use it. Because again, they banned me for supporting Kyle Rittenhouse. So you can get banned for that on Twitter, even though
Not
the
not
jury agreed with me.
not cursing out Putin though.
Oh yeah, yes. That is another thing. I'm curious to see whether the terms of service for Truth Social will be amended so that you cannot call for assassinations of political leaders, or you can now call for assassinations of political leaders, because breaking news earlier this evening was that Facebook changed their terms of service to allow for calls for political violence against Putin, and only Putin, because again, these terms of service by big tech companies just alter for various political events and whatever political narrative they need to push. And of course, that's a dangerous precedent to set, that you're going to allow some political calls for violence and not others. Or the fact that you're going to be very selective about allowing calls for political violence. So that's a bad direction, because again, they're just going to run the same playbook on the general population, and most likely Christians. Let's be real, because we have the most offensive belief system. So let's go through the terms of service for Truth Social.
I mean, one thing I will point out on Truth Social, I mean, it's very comparable to Getter. And the other thing is, it looks very haphazardly written. It, like to me, it kind of looked like they just copied like EEOC guidelines for like employment applications and then just pasted that into their TOS. It also has numerous spelling errors and grammatical errors. So if you look at the article,
Okay,
you notice,
so yes, I was going to right there ask you if those grammar errors that I saw in the article were from like you quoted that from the terms of
yeah,
service, that
and I'm not
there's
a,
like an extra comma where they erased something and didn't
it,
erase the comma or something like that.
yeah, I mean, I wasn't gonna put sick because or SIC sick because I'm not pretentious. But yeah, that was basically their spelling errors. It looks like they took out the word obscene, but I'm just trying to guess. Also, they have in the one above it, they have language, but like it's just I don't know. It just seems it doesn't flow. Or it's just like racist comma language. But and again,
Yeah,
that
the grammar on those terms of service are really bad.
yeah,
And I
that's
noted that when editing the article.
but yeah, that was how, and it's still written like that. They haven't changed it. Um, but one, but on their TOS, one thing I noticed was again very similar to Getter, but at the same time, it is more restrictive. Like they have an entire, I guess, line item dedicated to fake news, misleading statements, which again Getter didn't have, but they could have at the same time enforced it. Because again, when you have the catch-all otherwise objectionable, you can do whatever you want.
And
So
then and that's what concerned me about with the YouTube alternative Odyssey is they have that catch-all in their terms of service. So that made me a little bit concerned about Odyssey, but it's still I don't trust a Canadian Rumble to be free speech. I just don't. And I get that that's a little bit prejudiced, but let's be real about the state of Canada and the fact that it's Dan Bongino's running company, and Dan Bongino doesn't know how to make a good product. Just a fact, and he doesn't know how to run, or he knows how to grift Marylanders for running for office. He knows how to do that. But one thing I noted in the Truth Social terms of services, they're very desperate to make a family friendly social media company.
I mean, I'll give them credit on like Twitter. I mean, they look like they'll ban like pornography. Same thing with Snapchat and like Instagram, which basically allows people to sell themselves.
Yeah,
So
Snapchat has
does
gotten
what
extremely shameless when it comes to allowing
OnlyFans.
e-thoughts to run up the algorithm, and they're literally shoving a bunch of influencers or Twitch streamers, female Twitch streamers, of course, the ones that wear little clothes and play on easy mode, those types, and they're pushing them up, they're boosting them up the algorithm, and then you see these accounts that are boosted up the algorithm. It's literally just one person posting ads for these whores. Basically, they're just e-whores that they're just getting picture after picture. It's a different one, different one, different one, different one. And it's like, how does their algorithm allow that? But Truth Social definitely wants to be a family friendly environment. They're also with the Gab as far as no pornography on their platform, which, again, there is something commendable about that because porn's not free speech. Let's be real. It's not free speech. If you can't just do it outside, it's
Oh, you
not free
can in
speech.
San Francisco.
Oh, yes. In San Francisco, you can, especially if it's gay. So it's not free speech, but they emphasize family friendly content. And did you check to see if there's an age limit on Truth Social? Like, can a
Um,
7-year-old download it, or is it
I thought it
13
was
the
eight.
earliest?
I thought it was 18, but
Oh, so it's an 18 and
I
up
could be
platform.
wrong. I could be wrong on that. Nothing.
Yeah, because that would be interesting if they're like, this is an 18 and over platform only, but it's family friendly content only. That just seems like a contradiction in their terms of service. But one thing that was readily apparent is that they're already doing language policing.
Yeah, they do have 18.
18 is on their terms of service.
Yes.
So 18 is on their terms of service, but they're obsessed with policing language. They're obsessed with policing otherwise content and
I mean,
news. They're going to judge what news stories are true and false. That's in their
yes,
terms of service.
expressly in their terms of service. So it's not even like a fake news or misleading information or dangerous information or I think what's the exact phrase? Um,
Yeah, pull up the exact.
false, inaccurate, or misleading. Again, I bring up like, okay, would they ban CNN? Which again, CNN, your typical fake news, or would they ban more like RT, because it's Russian backed, or would they ban like
Remember,
Maxwell?
Russian state media is bad, but British state media is good. Canadian state media is okay. It's like we have to me, like, don't trust any state sponsored media, especially the British or the
Like
Canadians.
would they ban like Maxwell trial the Maxwell trial follower account? Again,
Pizzagate?
was that a
I don't know. Would they ban Pizzagate?
Yeah, I mean, it's they have it in there, which again, Getter didn't have that as far as their TOS goes. Not saying that they couldn't have done it, but they didn't have it in there. The other thing I noticed, again, when it goes back to like copying and pasting EEOC stuff in there, like marital status, like marital status is apparently a you can't uh,
Yeah, you can't make fun
offend
of someone's divorcee, or you
this.
can't make someone. Oh, I'm a polygamist. You can't make fun of me. See, it's in the terms of service. You
Yeah,
can't make fun of that.
discriminatory
What?
references on marital status. So what calling someone an incel is going to get you banned on truth according to their TOS, it could. And again, I don't that's not on getters at all. Like obviously disability, so using the word retarded could get you banned. I mean, that'll get you banned on Twitter more than likely, especially if you
That's true.
attack Jack Dorsey with it. But
Learn to code. Is that another thing? Can learn to code get you banned on Truth Social?
I mean, possibly if it's deemed false, unlawful, threatening, harassing. So
I
that,
guess that's the question. Like, what? Oh, so harassment is again. I like Gab where you can harass people.
I mean, age. I mean, if you're making a discriminatory reference to someone's age, what is calling someone a boomer or something? Okay, boomer.
Yeah, is
Just
that because I drop boomer in a derogatory fashion all the time. Now I don't hate boomers, and boomer cons are the most well-meaning people out there. They are the most well-meaning people out there. They just have an older operating system that's not up to date on the current political situation. That's the issue with the boomer generation. The most
and
well-meaning, the most well-resourced, but they don't have the right operating system or the up-to-date operating system. But and here's a question from Pete. What was Trump's reason for not being on? I assume he means Gab. And I believe the question, I believe it had to do with Jared Kushner not
yeah, that
wanting.
was.
It had to do with Jared Kushner, and I think they wanted to extort Andrew Torba for either a percentage cut or the terms of service. I believe it was one of those two things, but I believe sorry, Jared Kushner. I said Andrew Kushner, didn't I?
No, I thought you said Jared, or I don't know.
They Kushner wanted to. I believe he wanted to coerce Andrew Torba into changing his terms of service or changing his company to allow Trump an ownership stake. I believe that's what had to do with it. So, among the other things that can get you banned on Truth, or let's see what already has been banned from Truth.
Oh, the one thing I wanted to bring up was I guess the word cracker. Like if someone gets, because Twitch has taken action against that again based on their TOS, would that qualify as I guess
And
a racial
just talking about
slur?
alternative platforms, let's talk about Twitch for a second. Twitch is literally a platform that has no regard for copyright law. They have no regard for copyright law. I can literally just wear nothing except not completely nothing, but I can wear revealing clothing, have Netflix pulled up on a screen share, and just sit and watch Netflix. And that does not count as that does not violate, or Twitch will do nothing about that. And that's a blatant copyright violation because you're not making any content transformative. You're just sitting there watching it and eating popcorn. That's not transformative content. But Twitch allows that because they would have to ban some of their most popular users or their most popular accounts if they crack down on that, which is again a blatant copyright law violation. And whereas YouTube actually isn't terrible, what is terrible about YouTube is that you can abuse it easily. And the resolution process for YouTube copyright is very lengthy. Like I had a video down for 2 weeks that was wrongfully applied a copyright strike, and then I appealed it, but it was down for like 2 weeks in the process, despite the fact that I was eventually vindicated. Now the video is back up. But they at least YouTube at the end of the day, you have to go to court. Whereas Twitch, it's like, you got to catch them in the act because I don't think Twitch saves streams. I mean, I could be wrong about that. I don't know how Twitch works, but I do know that you can blatantly get away with copyright law or copyright infringement on Twitch. What's the copyright on Truth Social? Is there anything about that?
I imagine it's a standard. I mean, it kind of looks
DMCA
standard.
takedown request.
I don't know if they have their entire resolution. Let's see. I don't know if they. I mean, I'm sure they have it because I
Because
know.
I know even Twitter has some process for DMCA takedown request, and
Yeah,
they'll nail.
They do
They
have
will
a.
nail if you post a video of a UFC fight. It'll be gone the next day. So you'll get the likes and follows that night, but it'll be gone the next day. That's for sure.
Yeah, they have a DMCA.
Yeah, I imagine they do. Like I think even Gab might have that. I mean, Gab's again they're very grassroots in terms of or I don't know, bootstraps. I don't know what word to use, but again, rugged and coming in to make no friends along their rise to the top. That's what Gap's kind of doing. Whereas Truth Social is like they invited a bunch of conservative influencers.
And
Those
they
are the
gave
people
them
who had
really.
early access to the platform, assuming they had Apple. And then they had a wait list for everyone else, assuming you have Apple. So
I mean, they claim that it's like the beta launch, and then they're eventually going to like do the full product in March. But at the same time,
it's March.
You can't release for Apple, and then call that a beta launch. I mean, when
That's insulting.
48 to 50 some percent, low 50s have iPhones. I mean, that's a launch. It's not like, oh, you release it on BlackBerry and like 10% of people have that, or like 10 people have that actually.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do a beta launch, you should do it on a desktop.
Yeah.
That way, you're not just in. Apple is beta. That came in the comments. That see, I've never had Apple. So here's the thing about Apple. I do not know how to activate an Apple account. I really don't. I think the reason why I don't know how to activate an Apple account is because I don't have an Apple phone. I don't have an Apple computer. So that being said, I cannot create a podcast or connect a podcast RSS feed to get it on iTunes or whatever Apple Podcast, whatever they call their service, because I can't activate a Apple account because they don't let you activate an Apple account. It's probably because I don't have an Apple product. So it's just insane. But Spotify was pretty easy. That's really all I got about Apple. Like I don't get the social media prioritization of Apple over Android. I don't get that. Create it parallel. It's not that difficult. It's like moving from one test environment to another test environment as far as code goes. It's not that difficult. So let's go back to the question of what has already gotten banned on Truth Social.
So I guess the examples I pulled up were like the major ones that I guess let's see.
You mentioned a parody account in the article.
Yes, because the CEO of Truth Social will be Devin Nunes, who's a congressman,
I
or
thought it
I
was
guess
Nunes.
Nunes.
Yeah,
Um,
he's a rhino, by the way. The only thing that Devin Nunes is good for was he was great at fondling Trump, and he came in handy to continue with the pun during Trump's Russiagate, during that Russian hoax. Devin Nunes was all over defending Trump during that. So that's Devin Nunes' claim to fame, but otherwise he had a very crappy voting record. Just pointing that out.
and I think he left
He
Congress because
left
he's going
Congress
to
to
get,
be the CEO of this
but I
company.
think he was going to get gerrymandered out anyway. Um,
Oh, they want to gerrymander him?
I assume he might have been the odd. I think he might have been the odd man out, but or he would have lost his seat otherwise. But I mean, regardless, I mean he becomes the CEO. He has no. I mean, again, the account's called Devin Nunes Cow, so it's a reference to him being a dairy farmer, which I'm gonna
Oh,
take.
really?
Yes, I'm gonna take a wild guess that he ran his congressional campaign touting his dairy farming experience.
He's
So I
got
guess
to know.
that's earned him some mockery. And again, I've pointed out it's just like running a social media company or tech company is not the same as running a dairy farm. And obviously, different background, different experience. Like someone like Torba is at least he is a Silicon Valley guy. Obviously, Peter
Yes.
Thiel
So
is
let me pause right there because Andrew Torba was in Y Combinator, which is a big deal. That is a big deal. I know what Y Combinator is, or at least I used to know what Y Combinator was. And it's literally an elite program for startup companies. That's what Y Combinator is. Companies you have heard of are Y Combinator. Like they have major companies. You know, I don't know that I can't name an example off the top of my head, but I imagine like a company like Spotify might have been a Y Combinator company. You can find a whole list of major tech companies that came from the Y Combinator program, and Andrew Torba was a part of that. And I believe he got kicked out of it. So continue. You mentioned Peter Thiel was the next
Like
name you
Peter
mentioned.
Thiel is a big name and like I guess right leaning I guess venture capital. He's even doing like a dating site apparently for like that's gonna be like an exclusive. Like I met it's I got
He's
the in.
gay though.
I don't know, but
I wonder how that'll work. Is it going to be like
it's
Lindsey
gonna be
Graham's Grinder account?
it's gonna be like an exclusive invite only. So it's gonna be like that Raya or whatever it's called. That's like the rich people app except conservative only. So that means you go to
Wait,
CPAC, you get
what?
it's an exclusive
Araya?
conservative. I don't know. There's a super elitist dating app that's exclusive and member only. So he's gonna do that with conservatives. So you go to CPAC, you get your invite, and
But
then
he's
he's
not a
gonna.
conservative.
I don't know.
Like Peter Thiel's not a conservative. I mean, he has had some boss moves, like was it suing Gawker twice? Was it Gawker? Yeah, it was
I
Gawker,
believe
right?
so.
Or is it Gizmodo? I can't. I always confuse the
I thought
two.
they
Yeah,
changed
it
their
was
name.
Gawker. It was Gawker. He sued Gawker twice, and just to bankrupt them. And I think he bought their archive just to delete it. Like I think that's he did something like that. Like that's a pretty boss move.
I mean, he is
Uh,
active in a lot of political campaigns, like
he
Ted.
is, but he's not like a conservative.
No, I mean
He's
like he's
maybe
more libertarian,
libertine.
but I know like Ted Cruz was a Peter Thiel. I think I have JD Vance as a Peter Thiel backed candidate. I'm sure there are others, but so he is. I mean, he is pretty active on the donor scene.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. I mean, he is a very successful venture capitalist. That is undeniable.
and even like Jason Miller, who does Getter, is at least I guess a communications guy. So not exactly sure what communications
I mean, he's
qual-
not a good
qualifies for.
communications
No, he's not.
guy.
But
Like he's, worked on failed campaigns, Trump 2020, Cruz 2016,
Giuliani, 2008. Like he goes
Giuliani.
back. He has a huge record as far as our lengthy career.
I mean, it's like if Karl Rove didn't work for George Bush. So that being said, where were we? We were on like
Oh,
people behind.
Devin Nunes, Cal. So basically a parody account that existed on Twitter tried to get on Truth, and I guess they got banned pretty much out of the gate. So I mean, again, I've heard similar claims on Getter. If you attack their CEO, or not their CEO, but their banker with the Chinese Miles Gu, or I don't know how to pronounce his name,
Gooey or something. I don't know.
Gui. But if you attack Miles, then you might get shadow ban censored or something. I've heard claims along those lines, but I
Yeah,
haven't quite
Elijah
seen it.
Schaefer has done a lot of reporting on Getter. And, again, Jason Miller from Getter, let's talk about that for a second. This guy literally snuck in abortion effects into his baby mama smoothie. Like he snuck in abortion pills into her smoothie. And, this is all on the record. He tried to sue for defamation and lost. And that's the type of man that Jason Miller is.
I mean, when I
He's
wrote
literally
the
pro-abortion. He's literally tried to kill a baby, and I forget whether he succeeded or not, but it doesn't matter. That's the type of man he is. He didn't want to deal with the consequences and instead try to pull a murder here. Like that's what type of man Jason Miller is.
when I wrote on I guess when I wrote on Getter, I did actually say he has a lot of trouble with the ladies. So like that area of his life is
Here we go. Coming in for the rescue.
Kiwa.
Chihuahua. See, I didn't know how it
Wouldn't
was
have guessed it.
spelled. Yeah, I'm just taking a guess here. That is what we need chats for. Is
I'm sure that's why he
coming
goes
in
by.
to save the day.
That's pretty sure that's why he goes by Miles, because
Yeah,
it's a
it's
little
like
more palatable for the English
yeah.
language.
So yeah, and he's a little shady. I don't think he's completely pro commie, but I don't think
I mean, he's not in good standing, but at the same time, he is probably a shady billionaire. I mean,
he might
you're
not be in good standing, but that could be the point of his mission. Like that's what he needs to get in.
and their software is more or less entirely like I guess rolled over from a app called Getomi or something, which was a Chinese social media app. So I mean, and of course, if you're connecting one social media site to another social media site, which was kind of like Getter's claim to fame, odds are your privacy is not going to your and data is not going to be well protected.
Yeah,
So
because
that
they literally just ripped your information from Twitter.
yeah, I think they would like load in your tweets,
So
and
there's
that
no point in being on Getter because if you tweet something, it'll get mirrored on Getter. So what's the point of going to Getter to post that same tweet? And then, of course, they migrate your audience, so you don't really know how big your audience really is. Uh, Here's another comment on Gua.
good old Miles.
Whatever his name is, he's super sketchy. Ever see his take down the CCP video filled with occult Mason symbolism? I really got to look into Freemasonism. I really do, especially because of where we live and how I'm hearing about how Freemasons are, a dominant group in Carroll County, if you know what I'm saying. So they're a dominant group, and they have lodges all over the place here. So I got to look into that more because you kind of like you see the gaps, and a lot of these rhinos are like Freemason types here in Maryland. Just something to keep in mind.
Well, I know one thing about Miles was he was early to sound the alarms on the lab leak. I think he was doing it even before March of 2020, so he was very early, and he is, for better or worse, associated with Steve Bannon. So that's just two things about him.
Okay.
But unlike his partner, he doesn't have trouble with ladies, at least not to my knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, he is just shady and just a despicable piece of garbage. So that's kind of like I don't see the reason to join Getter. It's just that is just so uncomfortable to know that their CEO still has a job after like murdering or trying to murder his child. And then back to Truth's. Oh wait, Steve, call the play, run the play, Bannon. I wish I knew more about Bannon. I just don't. So back in 2016, when Steve Bannon was first really coming into the scene of like major prominence, I just got so turned off from it that I just did not pay attention. And then Trump made him like chief of staff or whatever. And then he did not do a great job there either, but probably was better than a lot of the other people he put in that position as well. And it's just like Trump had a lot of bad hires. I don't know whether Steve Bannon was one of them. Probably not. He's probably above the average. I wish I knew more about Bannon, but I just don't. But Bannon at least did a lot of stuff regards to election integrity and issues like that. So give him credit there. So as far as what falls under the scope of false or misleading information? So obviously you talked about parody accounts of the CEO is a no-go at
Which again, I mean,
Truth
legally,
Social.
should be able to do parody so long as it's not like a direct impersonation. So
Yeah,
I
it's
think, but as far as
Devin Nunes cow is clear parody,
yeah,
and
so I
that's
mean,
not allowed.
I again when they don't define their most of the time they won't define their terms, but I mean maybe you can glean context from it. If it's like talking about pornography, you can probably glean that the terms in it are relevant towards pornography. So if it says you know obscene, lewd, lascivious, then pornography in the same line, it's probably talking about those kinds of activities. Versus if it's just talking about like hate speech type thing or what is um, hateful.
I mean, it's a tough line to follow because, like, take drag queen story hour. That is lewd and lascivious.
Exactly.
Like, to me, that is a crime already on the books. You can't do lewd acts in front of a minor. That's a crime.
Again,
That is a
filthy.
direct charge.
Again, what is I mean, obviously, like calling for someone. Again, when the terms themselves are just not defined. I mean, no one. I don't think anyone really defines their terms as far as what is obscene, because
YouTube probably goes the furthest in defining their
yeah,
terms.
because they
It's just
probably
that their terms are pretty bad. They don't really like they spell it out, but at the same time they don't spell it out. And you're like on the fence of like because they only spell out like, oh, this is a controversial thing, and it's just talking about 9/11 conspiracies. Well, there's a whole lot of things that could also be controversial or sensitive topics, and you're just talking about acts of terror or 9/11 conspiracies and stuff like that. So that's what YouTube's terms of service are like. They also added like dishonest content. So if you're encouraging people to cheat on tests or something like that, like if you have a video on that falls under like dishonest content or something like that.
no, that I've not come
So
across.
like I wonder if Ed Litton's plagiarism or sermons would be fall under that category of dishonest content.
No, he paid for it. He didn't steal it.
Yes. And speaking of docent, and I got multiple shout outs on my article on Willie Rice, which was from several months ago. That came back into the surface because Willie Rice is going to be the next SBC president because he's the front runner. Kevin Ezell is going to be flying all the people in to vote for him. And
And
I
it's
got
LA.
multiple shout outs. Like Protestia gave me a shout out. John Harris gave me a shout out. So I'm living high.
No, also it's in LA. They're probably
Yeah.
still doing COVID stuff,
I mean,
and then
there's a lot to talk about with the Southern Baptist Convention coming up and how, they're really trying to float Vody Bakum, even though he's already declined being nominated for SBC president. Like he's already said no because he doesn't think that he's eligible.
and let's be real, he can have more impact in the mission field than he can.
Yes, I would agree. But that'll be another video for another day because I'm gonna float the name Tom Buck in the race. So, oh, thank you. Shout out. You did a good job covering the docent scandal, by the way. I think this is how I found this channel. I was definitely top 3 in covering docent. I'm not going to say I was number 1 because I didn't initially break it, but the strategy I took was who are the clients? Let's start outing them. Who are their writers? Let's start outing them. I took a more militant approach to it. And then you just find all these churches that used it. And, each one of them had a different story to tell. One of them was just a mega church that wanted to be like the mega church down the street. It was literally that shameless and obvious that from afar, I could tell they wanted to be the mega church down the street. Another one was a woke Southern Baptist church. And then another one, what was the other one? It was a very influential Southern Baptist church. It's where Robert Jeffress came from. It was his former church. So there's still a mega church in their own right, still a large church. And then, I reported on the small church. And then Willie Rice's church came up because he had Sunday school curriculum used that was purchased from docent. So, and to me, there's no way that Willie Rice would have Sunday school curriculum use docent research group if he weren't also using it. I just don't see that happening. That's not how budgets are written. So just to go back and I guess he's new to the chat or new to the stream. Is Truth Social a free speech site? And the answer to that is no. We're kind of itemizing what is and what isn't allowed. We've covered parody accounts, specifically parody accounts of the CEO of Truth Social. Apparently that'll get you banned. Anything else that that's gotten banned already?
Stu Peters, I know, got
Stu Peters.
I guess I don't know if it's banned or more just shadow banned or just labeled as
No,
sensitive content.
he got labeled. They labeled
And that was
his content, and it was about vaccinating children.
Yeah, basically saying the government was murdering children through dangerous shots, and they should be put on trial and executed. So he was coming off a little hot, and
he was coming off hot, but that's not a call to violence.
No.
That's a call for justice. Yeah,
So.
again, If
I mean, that's a
someone like Francis Collins should be, put on trial, found guilty, and hang him high, like the Clint Eastwood movie.
so again, I do wonder if would and again, Trump's, touts his vaccines as, saving 100 million lives.
Yeah,
Um,
that is the thing about Trump, and he's kind of slowed down
so
on that
you
messaging.
always
So
had to, but you know, you're disparaging Trump's record. Is that going to get you shadow banned, censored, or anything like that? And again,
yeah,
Trump is a, admittedly, he is a petty dude. Come on, he knows a thing or two about having a beef with some people. And if if we're going to be honest, I mean, would he apply that same logic to his own platform? And
I think the answer will be yes.
but again, I mean, he wouldn't be alone in that category,
So
given.
here's a snotty question: would Trump accusing Ted Cruz of cheating on his wife be purged from Truth Social?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, no one defines their terms. Obviously, that's a misleading story, but you know, the lie will circle the world before the truth gets its pants on. So, and again, there seems to be an emphasis on falsehoods when, because again, that's why, I guess that's why Trump got banned on social media, and that's part of what's driving him to
No,
all
Trump
these
got banned on
projects.
social
Well,
media because of J6.
yeah, J6, but like,
Okay, another comment on Stu Peters. Stu made a lot of content that seems like poisoning the well for those that are exposing a corrupt medical industry. I don't know much about Stu
yeah,
Peters. I'll be honest. I know he works with Lauren Whitkey,
what's key?
Whiskey, and I know you think she's a spark plug in a way.
Yeah,
She's a fiery. You should watch it's Conservative TMZ. It's an Elijah Schaefer thing with him. And he's just moderating between Lauren Witzke, John Doyle versus Blair White, the tranny, and that one grifter chick that I
yeah, I
forget
don't
what her
remember.
name is,
I
but
mean, she was a
she's just a
liberal anyway.
grifter. Like, come on. Like she's obviously the two people that wanted the big tent on that platform were the grifters. Like John Doyle's pretty serious. I think Lauren Whitkey pretty serious. Again, she ran for office and did very well in Delaware, even though that wasn't a competitive race, but it was certainly more competitive than Kim Klacik in West Baltimore. So I don't, and she had a
Well,
very good story as well. And another comment I want to touch upon is free speech platforms really don't work well on a because they scare away users and advertisers. To what degree do you think that's true?
I mean, again, first off, if you're small, you're not going to get advertisers anyway, so that would be the first hurdle you kind of have to jump. Um, so that, I mean, that would be, again, you have to have users in order to have advertisers, and then maybe, I mean, nowadays with the woke corporations, yeah, I mean, look at what the corporations are doing to Russia. So I mean, they're not scared; they're just woke, and they don't want to
Yeah,
be associated with.
like the Biden regime or regency, as I like to call it a regency because we know who's not running the country. So there is a regent, and I'm not sure whether you're supposed to call the regency named after the regent or named after the person who needs the regency. I don't know how it works because they don't focus on a whole lot of regencies in history or they are brief. But anyway, the Biden regency is trying to blame the oil companies for our shortage. And here's the thing: I kind of believe the Biden regency on this one. I think they're not actually wrong that the oil companies would rather screw us over and then come in to make a profit afterwards. I don't think they're completely wrong that these companies are so woke that they would prefer to not make money to pursue the message. That's why you're not seeing drill baby drill campaigns that you would have seen during the Obama years.
I mean, yeah, they need to. I mean, they want to take cash in on while the iron's hot. Of course, they want to add more because if they're able to sell more at $130 a barrel, that's just easy
But
money. But
here's where I will caution this comment on free speech platforms don't really work on a big scale. Where that's wrong is that the same thing is true with conservative media. I mean, there's that Ryan Long sketch about conservative advertisers versus leftist advertisers, and the leftists have all the legacy advertisers.
Yeah, they have major corporations, and then
Major corporations, especially pharmaceutical corporations. And then the right wing content is Patriot Water. It's Patriot Firewood. It's something absurd.
or supplements or
Supplements, something like
gold.
that. Gold, always gold.
So I mean, a lot of the mega advertisers will want to advertise on liberal content anyway.
And
So
I
I mean,
believe what did that to conservative media is when Rush Limbaugh accurately called Sandra Fluke a slut. That's what did that to conservative media. That was like the beginning of the end. I mean, if it wasn't Rush Limbaugh calling Sandra Fluke a slut, it would have been something else. But
him talking about Donovan McNabb or something like
I
that.
mean, Rush Limbaugh said a lot of awesome based and offensive things. Speaking of based, we also have another comment here about John Doyle is based. Yes. And you got me into John Doyle.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he's Catholic and all, but he's still based. I can't deny him that. Like, yeah, base knows base, base recognized base. So, here's a comment on Telegram, Gab, BitChute, and VK. What is VK? Is that a streaming platform or all good? Now, BitChute just doesn't look good. I've not used Telegram yet.
I haven't. I don't know how free speech it is.
I think it's more like private chat rooms.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, a lot of people have their own like private, like influencers, commentators. They have their own.
To add to the list, Signal. Signal is pretty good. That's a texting platform. You can also do video calls like Zoom. So, obviously, there's a lot of things that could be censored. And with going back to the whole issue of Truth Social censoring based off, what Trump thinks is truth. And I think that's pretty much your baseline for what they would censor and what they would not censor. Okay, so VK is a live streaming platform. I thought it was. I thought I could use Restream to stream on VK. I just don't have VK. And then Cozy TV, I think is like another one a lot of banned content creators are going to. So
yeah, when I did the Jordan Lee, what was it, Jesse Lee
Peterson?
Yeah, when I did that, I linked it to the stream on.
Now, what you didn't go so far as to say when you wrote that article is he's probably a false teacher.
Probably, but
he's probably a false teacher.
It's weird because he's so orthodox on like the homosexuality issue. But
he's based on those issues,
kind of
but
just selling like self-help for men kind of thing. And again, he mixed the Oedipus complex into Christianity. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, because he completely botched Original Sin.
Again, I use that loosely. It's just like, I guess this is his concept of original sin.
His concept of original sin is like blaming the mother and putting an Oedipus complex into original sin, which is inaccurate because original sin passes through the father. That's why Jesus was born of a virgin. Fun fact. Or that's why he had to be born of a virgin, so he didn't have the original sin. That's why Immaculate Conception doesn't make sense. Immaculate Conception for Mary, that is, doesn't make sense. And then, of course, is a never-ending chain of how was Mary immaculately conceived and not her, and not Mary's mom. It just never ends. So, Jesse Lee Peterson definitely is crazy. He uses these alt platforms, I guess, as well, because he's basically like Uncle Ruckus, but the religious Uncle Ruckus, because Uncle Ruckus was a preacher in the show, if you recall. So that being said, we talked about, Trump's truth would be the baseline for what is banned and what is not banned. And
but then they have.
I'm gonna throw a shock question: is Nicholas Fuentes allowed on?
I think
Truth Social.
I think he's on it.
Really?
I think he is. I don't know how active he is on it, but I do think he's on it.
Okay, because I'm unaware of because that's your baseline. It used to be Alex Jones. But now it's Nick Fuentes. If Nick Fuentes is allowed on a platform, that is probably free speech. If he's not allowed on a platform, it's not free speech. And it's not because I endorse Nick Fuentes. As far as I know, he's a bit of a homo, right?
I don't know.
Okay, so have you heard about his his thing with the cat boy dude.
I think I have, but it's one of them rabbit holes I just
It
don't know
is
if I
one of
want.
those dark rabbit holes on the internet, but if you look into Nick Fuentes going out with a cat boy dude, uh, you know, it's a pretty shady story. And I know Nick Fuentes is on Gab, and a lot of Groypers are on Gab. And to be honest, you know, he was trying to like put off being on Gab for a while, I think, or at least regularly.
Yeah.
But you know, Andrew Torba went out of his way to reach out to those guys, and he spoke at the AF PAC conference. And I read it, some of his speech, I believe, and it was
It
a
was
good
also
speech.
short. I mean,
He kept it
more power
brief.
to him.
A lot of comments on Tim Pool in the chat. I don't know Tim Pool. I tried watching Andrew Torba on Tim Pool's show, and I could not get past Tim Pool's annoying co-host. Like those guys added nothing to it, and I get it. You're like a Bitcoin libertine, and just it just doesn't interest me. I don't care that you're like the left wing libertine anarchist. That doesn't. I don't know. Like you don't have like a fully formulated worldview. So that's a lot of his, not Tim Pool, but a lot of his co-hosts. I didn't get a feeling. So it's like, let me just watch it on Elijah Schaefer, who's actually hilarious, and does a lot of the same journalism that Tim Pool does, and he's just funnier and more offensive and functionally retarded. So I do want to thanks for the super chat. B Hayes 82. Video game controllers dances goofily under the word woot. Man, I got a little story about that because I've been hitting the Xbox a lot lately because this is like a week off from the campaign, and man, I was doing a Rocky montage in Stellaris where I'm just building my fleet to take on the Chinese that I programmed. Like I programmed a China, I programmed an America, I programmed a Germany, I programmed a in Israel, the space Jews, and then the Germans were space Nazis, and the Israelis were the space Jews, and then there's the Chinese, the communist Chinese, and then there's Americans, and the Chinese got too powerful, so I had the Rocky montage to be able to take them on. So that yes, I was wooting last night as I was finally defeating the Chinese in my game. But that's a complete tangent because you video game controller in your comment. So anyway, while we're name dropping a bunch of other YouTubers and thing like that, most of them friendly. Like I don't have anything against Tim Pool. I can't get into his content. Like I'm sure like otherwise he's pretty good, and like I don't mind him being a guest on other people's things. Now Ben Shapiro used to give good interviews, and then can't give a good interview anymore. So I don't like the Sunday special used to actually be pretty decent, and then he just couldn't do it. I don't like his interview with Gina Carano's was terrible. Then he started booking like Meghan McCain, and it's like she's an actress. So anyway, we're name dropping, but back to Truth Social. Who are the big names trying to push Truth Social?
I mean, obviously the biggest one would be Trump, but he's not even on his social media as much as he should be. Like, given how many statements he comes up with, like he should be the primary pusher of his own product, but it doesn't seem like that's the case.
I
And
gotta
obviously,
well, I gotta pause because Shapiro would be good on the Second Amendment if it weren't for red flag laws, because I think he was pro red flag laws at the time. Just to comment on that, but yeah, you're right. Trump was not on Truth Social all that much. His
I
own
mean,
platform.
the guy, was up at 4 a.m. doing tweeting, and you
It's because he
gotta.
gets up early. He actually went to bed early. If I'm up at 4 a.m. on Gab, it's because I'm up at 4 a.m.
I mean, the guy that's tweeting at 4 a.m. should be tweeting at 4 a.m. on his own social media platform. So I mean, all
The reason why I ask is because these companies have been paying conservative influencers money to promote their platform. and to migrate their audiences to their platform. Gab is one of the companies that did not do that. Another company that would not do that is a company called Sayscape. They went out of business, or they ceased operations in the social media. They were a true free speech platform. You couldn't do pornography, and it was specifically designed. And I think one of their barriers was they stressed veterans a lot, but it wasn't a platform only for veterans. And I tried the beta version of that. It was a free speech platform. It was good, and it definitely got a lot better as I started using that platform. From when I started using the platform to where I had to stop using the platform because they ceased operations, but they refused to pay influencers to boost their platform. So I'm curious, and I don't think that Trump needs to do it because he is the influencer. He's the sole influencer.
I mean, on their
But like Rumble probably does that. Parler definitely did that. What was the other? Getter most certainly was doing that. So it's very few people can not do that and be successful. But at the same time, Trump is the person doing that, but he's the owner of the company, presumably.
Yeah, I don't quite know what his ownership stake is, but or what percent I should say. Probably a filing percentage, which would be over 5%. But I mean, yeah, they pretty much say that has 90 million Twitter followers, and he should be able to migrate those followers over. I don't imagine they're paying anyone else, but they were giving, I guess, early access to conservative media figures. So that was one thing they were doing.
I mean, that's just
So they
always
weren't
something to
paying.
watch out for. If people are hardcore promoting a product, it's possible that they're getting paid to do so. And Salty Cracker gets like 25K live stream viewers on Rumble. Is that good or is that bad? For Rumble.
I imagine.
For Salty Cracker. For Rumble, that's probably pretty good. But for Salty Cracker, is that good or bad?
I don't know who that is.
I don't know. I'm not super. I know the name, but I don't know enough about the channel or what their audience base is usually. But you follow like Steven Crowder and his story a lot closer than I do. Like what you tell me when you write about Rumble, you basically talked about how no one wants to watch something on Rumble if it's also on YouTube.
Yeah, pretty much. He got like a 30 or a 2-week ban or something, and his viewers went up 100,000 on Rumble. So
I mean, the ironic thing about Steven Crowder is that his content is better when he's banned from YouTube, and it's not even close.
And it's been honestly terrible this year.
Yeah, it's not been a great year for him, and
honestly, I think he actually is churning users, but
yeah, like I was looking at his and this is the number one conservative YouTube channel, and still probably is. But you look at his view counts; they've definitely gone down in the last 4 months.
I mean, he was pushing 1 million in December, like 1 million.
Yeah, he was pushing 1 million
in December, but now he's probably 3/4 or 750 some thousand. So he is churning users. Again, that's one platform, but I imagine again you're not migrating an entire audience to Mug Club or to Rumble, so
right. And again, Blaze TV is probably better for streaming than Rumble. I don't have many problems with Blaze TV unless like it's on the show's end where it's not like up or something like that. But I don't know if that's a Blaze issue or that's because they have one, I don't want to say campus, but they have one studio streaming connected to a main hub that's streaming on their app and stuff like that.
I mean, speed-wise, I mean, uploading a show from, I guess, like from Blaze Live to Rumble versus Blaze, I mean, it's more comparable versus YouTube, which is quicker.
Yeah, YouTube. Yeah, if I edit a video, it'll take so long to upload on YouTube, or considerably longer, because it'll take like an MKV format and change it to an MP4, which is a much larger file size. So that takes a lot more time to process, which is why I don't like editing long videos, or I just won't. And it's a good thing that I can start a video, get flowing pretty well, and not have to worry about editing or anything like that. Now, fun story, the last video that I edited because I like farted like mid sentence. I'm like, oh crap. I just completely lost control like I'm 76 years old. But no, so I just edited that part out. So yeah, just fun story. And it's not that I needed to edit it out, it's that it threw me off once I realized it. So you do that. But on a more serious note, my pastor, he was getting strikes from YouTube for like things said in the sermon. So he was looking at alternatives. He said that Rumble sucked. He said that the upload speed on Rumble takes forever. And then he got into Odyssey. I want to say I helped push him towards Odyssey because because the thing about Odyssey that makes me nervous is they can mirror your YouTube channel. So I'm not quite sure how that works, as opposed to you just uploading everything yourself. But then he also likes sermon audio as a good video platform as well. So again, I don't like editing videos. I'm not an editor. I'm not. Who's my pastor? I had him on for a live stream once, by the way, several streams ago on Sermon Gate. That's who my pastor is. So I'll probably bring him back sometime this year. I'll probably bring my pastor back just to do another stream. I'd like to do a stream on church discipline. So because Matthew 18 is a very ignored thing. So I just, I'd love to pick someone's brain about that. So that being said, where were we? Yeah, so the alternative YouTube platforms like Odyssey, even the channels that mirror on Odyssey, if they're on YouTube but also on Odyssey, they don't get the views that they would get on YouTube. So credit to YouTube, they are actually a good platform, and I think that's really what will drive good platforms. Is Truth Social a good platform technology wise?
I mean, I know they have open source code. I don't know if they're good or not because again, they don't have a product that's available for me to use unless I want to spend a couple $100 on an iPhone and wait and
More
be
than
on
a
a
couple
waiting
hundred.
list. So I mean, it's hard to actually tell what would be.
It looks like Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, they went for Twitter, obviously, because it's Trump.
Yeah, because he's obsessed with Twitter. And, the thing about Twitter is the character limit's very limiting. Twitter is not very friendly about posting links. Evangelical dark web links sometimes struggle to get compacted into a, how when you post a link on social media, it'll auto-generate a preview?
Yeah.
Like, Twitter's very stubborn about that sometimes, and it's really strange. I think it has something to do with Jetpack. Otherwise, I don't get it. Gab does not have that issue when Twitter has that issue. MeWe does not have that issue when Twitter has that issue. YouTube doesn't allow that stuff at all. If I were to post links on YouTube, they don't do that. Unless it's a YouTube video, I think they might do it. Because they keep that they keep things very tight. What does your pastor say that gets banned from YouTube? Take a guess as to what's happened in the last 2 years. And it'll be a passing comment, and it won't get banned for 8 months later. Then it's unacceptable. I think that was the story, but yeah, there's no more sermons on being uploaded to YouTube anymore. And to be honest, the church doesn't exactly have a thriving YouTube channel. That's not to say it's just, they could build that platform on a different. They could build up an audience on Odyssey for outreach, and I think it would be just fine. It's really shameful what churches get a lot of views on YouTube. And okay, so just go back to sharing my screen, because this is what Truth Social looks like, and it's just a download site. But everything else over here, every other tab over here, except for these three, but everything over here is on my latest write-up, because I do discerning articles, and the latest one that I'm working on is on Sadie Robertson. Now, Sadie Robertson, man, let me just pull up her channel for a second because it's like 500,000 subscribers. She has 500,000 subscribers. I did that Ghost Megachurch. The Ghost Megachurch. Okay, she has 537,000 subscribers. 537,000 subscribers. And I did that video on Ghost Megachurches, and I talked about it was Potter's House Church, which has 2 locations, now only 1 location. I did it on their one Denver location closing because, the lockdowns killed that church. And that was worth writing about. And Potter's House, they had like 1 million subscribers on YouTube. It was something insane. Because Sarah Jakes Roberts is incredibly famous. But Sadie Robertson is who I'm doing a verdict on. I'm writing about whether I think she's a false teacher or not. And she has over 500,000 subs on YouTube. And let me just say, she is a very deliberate speaker. She's a very deliberate speaker. And that is a very friendly way of saying she is a human rain delay. I can listen to her at 2x speed. And I've never been able to listen to a sermon at 2x speed. It's insane. So I'm writing about her, and she is painful to listen to. I don't get it. Like, Phil Robertson, he's an old guy, but, he at least is, when he talks, he's at least sticking to scripture. You might not agree with all his theological takes on the scripture, but he's at least basing what he's saying off of scripture. When she talks, personal stories, talking like this, it's painful. So I tried watching a Sadie Robertson talk from Passion Conference, and her voice was so annoying, in my opinion. I don't know if her voice was that annoying because I listened to her Passion Conference at a minimum 1.75 speed.
I mean, one would think
which has her talking at a normal pace.
One would think a southern accent goes a long way.
So, YouTube's not a great. This is a long-winded way of saying that YouTube is not a great place for churches to post sermons that will get a wide audience. If that makes sense. I just don't think it's a great platform for that. Maybe sermon audio is. And he was telling us, my pastor was telling us that the sermons that were getting the most success on these platforms were on like the end times. Just like basic question, like, what were the different views? So there's definitely a hunger out there for that. So back to Truth Social. What else is there about Truth Social to know? It's basically a Twitter clone.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is good for business. You don't want to be exactly like Twitter. Gab is not like Twitter.
Well, I think
it's
that's
not exactly like Twitter.
I think that's why they're trying to branch out. Like, they think of Netflix as their competition and Disney Plus. So I think they're trying to graft content on top of their.
So they're going to become a streaming platform for original movies, like the Daily Wire's content.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of is how I see it. I mean, it's hard to kind of tell.
Or I guess the other way to put it was they're going to Amazon Prime a membership for content, which actually isn't a terrible idea in and of itself.
I mean, it's expensive. I mean, if you're talking about buying rights to events, because again, I mean, Trump's a big promoter, and he has a history of was it XFL or American Football League or
USFL?
USFL.
Or is it US? It was the US Football League, I think, and he was the CEO of the Generals, I think, New Jersey Generals or something like that.
I mean, he could, and I mean, theoretically, he could actually.
And he ran that league into the ground by trying to sue the NFL, by the way. He encouraged them to sue the NFL when they had a viable product, but he wanted to sue the NFL he wanted to move their games to the fall, I believe, and then sue the NFL for monopoly, for antitrust. And they won the lawsuit, but they won like $3. $1 times 3x damage. Because that's antitrust law. So that Trump is a good brand, but he's not I don't think he's a very good CEO, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, that's why he's got other people.
Just to go back to a comment from earlier in the stream about Trump Steaks and Trump Airlines.
I mean, I know I've heard like Elijah Schaffer talk about how like Trump Steaks could have been like a planned bankruptcy, so to speak. Like he would purposely start a business so he could run it into the ground. That way he can, claim the losses on his taxes. So I mean, that
Hey,
might
and
be part of his tax strategy, which not going to hate.
Bill Clinton changed the tax code so you can carry. I believe it was Bill Clinton who changed the tax code so you can carry forward losses and carry forward losses. And I don't believe you should be allowed to carry forward losses. You should not be able to do that in the American tax code, but you can.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I did the feminist thing, when I was talking about, a pro-America, like a pro-family tax code, yeah, that would mean taxing businesses more and
That
then
like
lowering
I'm not
taxes on the
against
people. But
I'm not against a corporate tax existing because corporations are created entities that are free from liability. They have limited liability. And to me, the it is a fair price that they have to pay a tax for that liability, status. But income tax, that's absurd. That should go away. That shouldn't exist. So is Jared Kushner involved with Truth Social?
I
That's for
mean,
you.
I don't know if he is or not, but let's be real, I mean, he's in Trump's inner circle, so
Yeah, I
whether on
mean,
paper or not, I mean, is Donald Trump Jr. involved? I mean, obviously, Ivanka Trump probably as well. Like, I mean, if you're in Trump's circle, odds are, and if you have his
Mike
ear,
Pence.
yeah, come on now. Not Mike Pence, but like if you're in his
He's
inner
no
circle,
longer
you're
in the
involved.
circle. Is Tulsi Gabbard in the inner circle?
I imagine she'll be on Truth because she's trying to get in good graces with the right.
Yeah, like Tulsi Gabbard was a speaker at CPAC. And by the way, we'll talk about Matt Schlapp in a second. But Tulsi Gabbard, think about it. She is a socialist.
I mean, she was a Bernie girl in
Yes.
2016.
She is pro universal healthcare, like pro government healthcare. She was pro Medicaid for all. And yes, I know they called it Medicare, but it's really just Medicaid. Let's be real. They're just going to expand Medicaid for everybody. Like that's what that program would be. And she was pro Medicaid for all and pro abortion. I think she also pro gun control. Like I believe she had like a few things that were remotely right wing, being her foreign policy. She recognized, like Tulsi Gabbard got a lot of hate for recognizing that Bashar al-Assad is not the bad guy in Syria because he's not. Like you could worship freely in Aleppo after they retook it, but under ISIS you could not, and in Canada you cannot either. So obviously she was one of the only U.S. sitting members of Congress that did not fall for the scam that was the Arab Spring.
I mean, she is very like non-interventionist.
She's the opposite of Marco Rubio on foreign policy. And Marco Rubio is just a complete neocon. But that's the only thing that Tulsi Gabbard has going for her. And she hates Kamala Harris. But who doesn't? Who actually likes Kamala Harris?
Yeah, who can listen to her talk and like her? I mean, again,
Cackle. Her delightful cackle.
I was wondering today, it's just like, how did this woman, like, I don't know how did she get into the Senate? Like, forget I
How
mean,
did she get dressed?
we
How
know
did she
how
get
she got
dressed
her
in the
job,
morning?
but like,
No, that the answer
how
to
did
how she
she,
got into the Senate was that she's from San Francisco.
yeah, I mean, yeah,
And
San
San
Francisco is
Francisco was enough of a base voter pool it was a large precinct for the California primary, so she just had to carve out, she
I
just
mean,
had to
that's the
stomp on
political
other
machine
people.
because I literally think, like a bunch of their governors, they all come from San Francisco. So, but I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
still, how does that win a primary in any just hear
Well,
her speak?
California doesn't have a primary per se.
Huh.
You don't have a primary in California. You have basically a general election first round, and then the actual general election's a runoff election. It's not really a primary. It's they call it jungle primaries, but it's really just everyone's on a ballot and you can vote for two.
Yeah, because it allows you to get two Democrats on the ballot in
Yes, you can.
November.
Yes. I mean, it works the other way as well, but let's be real. That is not a real primary. And I don't oppose runoff elections. I like the idea of having runoff elections, but I don't like the idea of taking away a primary because that's where your party gets its ducks in a rows for the general. Like the primary election process is supposed to be about the parties, not about the voters.
Yeah.
But obviously America's changed on that view, and not for the worse, but California definitely for the worse. Like I like the idea of caucuses a little better than primaries because caucuses you got to actually be involved in the process. Except for Nevada. Nevada sucks with elections. They're just terrible with elections in Nevada. So anyway, one heartbeat away as far as Kamala Harris's delightful cackles ringing from the Oval Office and, the State of the Union address being the most ditziest State of the Union address in American history. We were
I
one
know we.
heartbeat away from that happening.
Yeah.
And, in that video I did on the other day, the video I did on Andrew Cuomo, again, if Joe Biden croaks, if dementia gets the better of him, are they really going to run Kamala Harris in 2024?
I mean, she'll run.
You don't do you think that she's unopposed?
I mean, generally speaking, when Democrats do their polling, it is her, then Buttigieg as the second. I don't know who else they have on their thing, but I
Andrew
mean,
Cuomo is going to rise again. Like
yeah.
his lack of self-awareness on the issues, he's just already championing it. Like I just see it. I see him running again.
I mean, fun story. Back in high school, I did a project on
Bethel
basically
pothole Pete. Just got to take a moment to
he
laugh at
likes
that.
filling in some
Pothole.
potholes, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Pete.
And again,
Or Thomas is the one who said that, but Pete's the one who would
can we
be
not
filling in
talk about
potholes.
the name Chasten?
Chasten.
Oh,
Oh,
I
yes.
know,
So
but if
the
you call it
grooming.
Chasten, then
Yeah.
Chasten.
Yeah. And that grooming video that he put out that's apparently in their Netflix documentary, but since no one watched that documentary, it's been out. That Netflix documentary has been out for as long it has been, and no conservative scrubbed it to get that grooming content from it.
I
Or
don't
they
know.
didn't like go through it. Like no one wanted to hate watch it that badly.
Maybe that's actually one of the more benign moments in it, and it's easy to overlook it. But
Maybe that's like
I
the
mean,
Anthony Fauci thing. We wouldn't even hate watch.
they just ripped a Pledge of Allegiance. I mean, they didn't even do like a clever job. It just looked ripped like a complete. Okay, let's do word for word, replace certain words in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then have a bunch of kids say it.
Well, you see, they're pledging allegiance to a different flag,
Yeah.
and it is grooming. That is what that is, and parents shouldn't do that. But I've already made that video. I've already made that offensive comment. Definitely send in your last questions because again, this is a chat. We like interacting with the chat. I think we've touched on a lot of the social media platforms. I think Gab is probably the best out there because they have the audience. There's actually interaction on Gab. There's a ton of memes. Yeah, a lot of them hate Jews. That's true. That is undeniable. But otherwise, there's good memes. There are good people on there. You certainly get news that is that you don't get from the other social media sites. So it's a pretty good platform, and the interactions there as well. Definitely follow my Gab that's linked in the description below. So, and definitely follow him on Gab
Mhm.
too, because you can just look through my profile and you can follow him as well. But it's gone a bit downhill lately. I don't see it going downhill lately. I just
And maybe it's
uh
been a little buggy, but that's about
here's a
it.
question for me. What are your thoughts on the LCMS, the Lutheran Church of Missouri Synod? Synod, right? Not synod. And I imagine they're the more like I read about them a while ago. Like I imagine they're not bad. And maybe their doctrine's a little whack, but I think there's probably a lot of good Christians in that denomination, whether by tradition or they just don't know. Because I believe what makes this church kind of unique is that they hold something close to the level of scripture. I could be completely wrong about that. I know they're conservative Lutherans, but I believe there's something else. I think there was an issue that I had that they kind of elevated a certain book that wasn't the Bible. Uh, so that's my impression, but I don't think they're like false believers or anything like that. Uh, Otherwise, yeah, we'll definitely do some final chats. Definitely plug yourself
Oh
and
yeah,
not in a Pete Buttgig way.
no, no, no. Or a
Hopefully,
Jack Murphy way, if you're catching my other references,
Jack Murphy.
or John Goldstein or whatever, or John Goldman or whatever. But yeah, not in that way either. Yeah, I'm generally on Gab, A_Fava. That's pretty much where you can find me.
And you also write for Evangelical Dark Web at
Yeah,
times.
I got something on. Yeah, there you go.
Jack Murphy.
Someone knows what I'm talking about.
Uh,
Um, but yeah, I mean, I got a thing on Russell Moore coming up that's pretty spicy. At least I think it is.
and we also got the rest of the Ohio races because you've been covering a lot of the election stuff. So just talk about what you're doing with the election.
So I mean, with the election, we're just trying to, I guess, do primary research. I mean, again, name recognition is the number one driver in a Republican primary. And already, what's kind of depressing is like in Texas, you'll have a bunch of people that'll run as challengers to like rhinos, but then in Ohio, you didn't see any of that, or at least, or maybe everyone just went for the glamour races. Um,
Yeah, governor or senate.
Governor, Senate, and then I guess I want to say two of the three open seats, or but yeah, it should be an interesting process. Again, trying to get name ID because I mean, someone like a Joe Blystone, I mean, he's probably the best guy in the Ohio governor's race, but he's has zero infrastructure, zero name recognition.
What
Uh,
what states are after Ohio to look out for?
Generally, it'll be in order of the primary. So I think Indiana and Nebraska would be next. I don't know who's after that because I haven't looked at the primary schedule in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I did this type of reporting in 2018 for that primary cycle. I did not do it in 2020 because what was the point in mail-in primaries? Like that's just not going to work.
I mean,
Uh,
I
there's
don't
just
even
no
think I
point
did
in
that.
raising awareness. Like I don't even know if I voted in the 2020 primary. I don't remember voting in the 2020 primary. So, uh, obviously that's coming up. You got a thing on Russell Moore. I'll be doing something on Andy Stanley. I gotta touch that, and I might also do a video on Sadie Robertson just because I'm writing an entire article about her. I might do a video just of a sample sermon of hers and just suffer through. Actually, I won't be suffering through it because I'm not watching that at normal speed. Like that is that no, watch listening to her live is suffering through it. Watching it, you know, and because that's how little she has to say.
So even if you don't live in like Ohio, I mean, there's still the Senate article still has a pretty interesting uh,
I mean that
thing on
JD
Jake,
Vance race is interesting to watch. That is a good race to watch, and
but there's still a discussion on like a previous article he wrote.
That was woke, right?
Yeah, it was pretty much like, critical race theory before critical race theory was a household term, and he wrote it at National Review. So I do an excerpt from that to take a look on. So again, I'm researching some of their articles, looking, filtering through their tweets because I'm not petty, and
No, that's how you do
seeing,
it.
just seeing what they're saying.
I mean, that's the job. That's what it is. That's what doing candidate research looks like. And most people don't do candidate research, and it's a shame. And we can't make people do candidate research. It's just something you have to do on your own. And unfortunately, most voters are low info voters. And I was meeting with the teachers union this week. And I don't care if the teachers union endorses me because most people are low info voters. And, it doesn't matter. Now, again, it's not like I agree with the teachers union's position. Like, I was pretty upfront about what I did and didn't agree with them about. But I went there, first of all, show that I actually cared. Because, if you don't respond to them, they'll take that as an insult. Second of all, I don't want my opponent getting that money. And, can't hurt. So, here's the last question. Do you think the SBC will go liberal again? Well, they already are liberal.
Yeah, that bridge has already been crossed.
I mean, can it go conservative again? That's the real question. And I think I'll do a video on, because I want to touch the Tom Buck thing. Because I don't think Vody Bakum can save the SBC. I'll be honest, I don't think Tom Askell could, as president of the SBC, could save it. Because again, he's too accommodating. I think we need someone with a little bit more fire and as much name recognition. So they need a real warrior. But J.D. Greer was a liberal. So he was part of the liberal takeover. Ed Litton just solidified and made it obvious, and he's rubbing it in your face. He's rubbing it in your face. That's the Ed Litton presidency in a nutshell. He's rubbing it in your face. He's promoting his political allies shamelessly, like Bart Barber of all people, and just touting sex abuse that wasn't actually sex abuse. It was just an affair. And you made the comment that or someone replied on your comment, and I just approved that comment. It was about how her dating life wasn't good, so that's why she was sticking around for 12 years, because she didn't have any other prospects. And
Well, what I said
I
was,
believe it.
Well, what I said was like, again, that 26 to 38, that's 12 years.
Yes, it's
That's
12
your
years.
that's your prime. I mean, if you're not married by 26, I mean that 12-year window is your prime marital years. I mean, your window is closed by the time you're 38. Not to insult, single 38-year-olds, but it's a lot harder to be single in 38 than single in 28, especially if you're a woman. Whereas if you're a guy, you kind of age a little like fine wine, especially if you have your life in order, house, car, money,
No ED.
So, yeah. So a 38-year-old man has a lot more advantages than a
you can just go on the market for, gently used baby mamas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Thoughts on talking about the black church in America? I mean, I certainly do at times when I need to. I think the church that I did the church that hosted Cuomo, I believe that was a black church. A lot of it is social justice gospel or prosperity gospel, or certainly an overlap of the two, because those are not mutually exclusive false gospels. They're just not. It's just it be like that. And now you're seeing a lot of the celebrities of that culture, your Sarah Jakes Roberts, your Mike Todd, they still get a lot of love from people that are in conservative circles, which is strange. Like, when I found out that Jason Whitlock liked Mike Todd, I'm like, are you kidding me? You of all people don't see right through this guy? I was just shocked.
And his boy Delano see through him?
Oh, yeah. Delano Squires of Blaze Media just tore him up. Like he read my article or something. And again, Here's a tangent. The DuckDuckGo. We were talking about them before the chat that we went on, and how DuckDuckGo is starting to, like, they're really clamping down and starting to censor and with their algorithms and stuff like that. And I started looking at alternatives to DuckDuckGo, like, so even smaller social search things, and and what I'll type in is Michael Todd false teacher. That's how I was testing alternative search engines. And if my thing was at the top, I knew it was good. If my article is Michael Todd, a false teacher, at the top, I knew it was a good search engine, because that should automatically rank higher, because it is a direct question being asked by a headline. And this one called Start Page had it on page 2 in favor of Pinterest posts and tweets. I'm like, are you kidding me? Other Paul, shout out to you. We got to do a stream sometime again. DuckDuckGo may be decent for privacy and alternatives, but in my honest opinion, is awful for just basic searches. I haven't had a problem on the basic searches thing, but I've been used to it for like 5 years. So I don't know, but
I mean, one thing that was big on them was how woke they were in their, I guess, their hiring process. I think it was either Lauren Chen or Jeremy from the Quartering that did a stream on, I guess, someone submitting an application, and then like their normal application, and then they did a woke application where I think they just completely made up an identity. Like they checked all the boxes, and then they got and then they answered a questionnaire or something, and basically revealed that they didn't know much about the job and that they liked the diversity push. And then apparently the woke candidate got the, I guess, message for the interview, the invite for the interview. So they are woke in their hiring process.
I mean, I remember a few years ago, like, diversity in Hollywood was not diversity in Hollywood. It was diversity in big tech. And it was like, basically they're lamenting that they don't have, they don't have like minorities in big tech. And it's like, well, how many people in IT are black? Because let's face it, they're not talking about Indians. They're not talking about Nepali people. They're not talking about Chinese people.
Yeah, but they hire those people
They're
through
talking
H1.
about blacks
Well,
and Hispanics.
they take advantage of the H1B visa program to hire those people anyway, when they could have
Hey,
easily
those are
hired.
my people.
But there's plenty of people within their existing talent pool that they
No,
don't even
I'm
interview.
pretty sure in my line of work, if you're Indian or from Nepal, you can get a job just for that. I'll be honest. Like, just in my specific line of work. Because they've definitely hired people that do not know IT whatsoever. And I mean whatsoever. Basic keyboard commands whatsoever. So anyway, I think that's all we got for today. My name's Rez, the Evangelical Dark Web. If you like the kind of content, subscribe to the channel. That's the least you can do. And the most you can do is you can become a patron-like subscriber at evangelicaldarkweb.com/join, because Patreon censors. That's one of the other big tech or platforms we did not talk about was Patreon. And I don't use Patreon, so I just kind of built my own system. So you can use that. There are rewards and stuff like that. And anyway, have a blessed day, and I will catch you on the next